So the topic of our talk today is the great name, the magic of mantras. How many of us have practiced mantra jap at some point or the other? All of us? And it's something everyone can do. It's the easiest form of concentration or meditation. But what is the science behind it? Why does it really work? So there is a science called sonoluminescence. Sono is sound, luminescence is shining light. So it studies how if you take a sound frequency and incubate it so that its frequency increases, the sound actually becomes light. So it's so beautiful that Mother and Sri Aurobindo say that both science and spirituality are finally seeking the same thing. They are seeking truth or God. But they say that whereas spirituality says, yes, we are seeking God, science doesn't acknowledge it. One way or the other, if it's seeking the truth, it's seeking God. But science doesn't directly say that it's seeking God. But mantra japa is really, in a sense, the science of sonoluminescence. How you can stay with a mantra, incubate it so that you raise its frequency with your devotion, with your aspiration, with your thought and emotion, so that it actually becomes light. And this many of us would have experienced when we are meditating. We stay with a name and we concentrate on it with, not mechanically, I don't think it works so well. But if your mind and your emotions twin with the name of whatever you're repeating, after a while we actually feel light as a sensation spreading through our body. We've all in a big or small way experienced this, isn't it? Now, a word is not just a word. A word is very powerful. There's a story of how there was a girl who crossed an ocean taking her guru's name because she had faith in the guru. And when the guru tried doing it, he couldn't do it. So that is the genesis of that saying, say Ram se bada Ram ka naam. That greater than even the being of Ram is his name. So the name is very powerful, especially if we twin it with our devotion and our bhakti. So in Indian thought, there is a thought that I attract my name to myself depending on my frequency. So many of us don't question what our name means, but you should know the meaning of your name, because depending on the soul frequency, you attract that name to yourself. So every name resonates with something of the quality of the being of that name. Now if you take a name like the name of your guru, the name of Ma Sri Aurobindo, it's a very, very high frequency sound. Now I'm going to read to you in Mother's words what the science behind it. So not the first page of the PDF, come to the third page, the power of Sri Aurobindo's name. So when one truly calls him, it is from there, Mother indicates the heart, that Sri Aurobindo answers. It vibrates by his name with his consciousness. There resounds the name of Sri Aurobindo because his imprint is there. His imprint is there in our psychic being. So there his name resounds. In the very depths, it is he who resides. All existence lives by him. It vibrates by him. The whole universe vibrates by him. Now we have to understand that Sri Aurobindo is not just this form that we see. Sri Aurobindo is the avatar. And what is the avatar? It's a direct descent of God consciousness into matter. So when we say Sri Aurobindo, we are actually naming the essence of the Godhead. So he is there in everything, vibrant and animating by his presence. The delight of his name penetrates and purifies all, rings and resounds everywhere in the sublime joy, eternal and true. With his name, the existence takes on a meaning. To rediscover the immanent divine hidden in everything is this whole universe. To find him is the eternal game. To feel him is to feel the immutable peace of perfect purity. To realize him is to find the eternal joy. To call him is to unlock the doors of infinity. This is the power behind the name Sri Aurobindo. Mother goes into a trance. Mother says, I am there as a presence in the eternal flame of the psychic being. The Mother is there as a presence, the power that animates and initiates the action, the peace that renders all sweet and beautiful. So Mother is there in our psychic being as a power that animates and initiates the action, the peace that renders all sweet and peaceful, the joy that overflows and sublimates, the light that purifies, and the vibration that sanctions, that says yes to your prayer. So in Savitri, there's a beautiful line saying, a power of silence in the hands of joy. That's the Mother. She's all the time active, she's hands of joy, but she's also a power of silence. And further it says, at once she was the stillness and the word, the manifesting word and the stillness. At once she was the stillness and the word. So Sri Aurobindo is there as a sustaining entity, and me, I am there like a guide. In fact, it is the same identity in two, one who observes, the witness, Sri Aurobindo, the Supreme Purushottam, and the other that effectuates, the Adi Shakti, the Shakti. So long as one has not realized that, one cannot understand anything. So Mother says again and again that so long as you haven't understood that Sri Aurobindo and I are one, we are a two-bodied single avatar, you haven't understood anything. Yes, my child, he who recognizes Sri Aurobindo and me, in fact it is the same thing, the same identity. For him all obstacles, all difficulties, all traps, all the so-called interruptions on the march towards the truth are swept away and removed forever, in this life as well as after death and in the lives to come till eternity. Yes, for him the Lord is all powerful. Only to repeat, Ma Sri Aurobindo, Ma Sri Aurobindo. Mother goes into a trance. That's enough. She goes into a trance. Further, she says, one sec. Okay, so now we come back to page 1 of the PDF. So Sri Aurobindo has told us, it's he himself who said it, that we are convinced by experience that above the mind there is a consciousness much wiser than the mental wisdom. So Sri Aurobindo has said that above the mind there is a consciousness much wiser than mental wisdom. And in the depths of things there is a will much more powerful than human will. So she has said, in simple words, she's telling us that our mind knows nothing. If we really want to know, we have to have access to that consciousness above our head. Also, our power and our will is very fragile and feeble. But there is a divine will, the will of the psychic deep inside us. And when we make our human will one with the psychic will, with the divine will, then life becomes a breeze. In Synthesis of Yoga, he says that when your will becomes one with the divine will, then you have no responsibility, no desire, nothing. You are just carried by that hand behind, by that unseen hand behind, which is doing all, which is willing all, which is making everything happen. But for you to know the divine will, it is necessary to silence your thoughts, because your thoughts will constantly pull you in the direction of your desires and what you want. But if you give that up, then your will becomes one with the divine will, and then there is no responsibility, no desire. You are just carried by that omnipresence which from behind is anyway carrying you. There's an unseen hand which is anyway carrying you. But you don't know it because you are trying to carry yourself, isn't it? So that's what Sri Aurobindo is saying. Now, very often for many of us, it's not easy to connect with this divine will or connect with this higher consciousness. But all of us live in words, right? Therefore, mantra japa is the easiest thing for us. So, a little bit of history of Indian schools. We know that there are 6 schools of Indian philosophy. They are called the Shad Darshans, the 6 ways of looking at life. And Vedanta is one of the oldest ones, 700 BC, started by Vedvyasa. And Vedanta says that the only way to come to the truth is to silence your mind. Because then when you silence your mind, you'll intuitively know that everything is God, that you are God. But Vedvyasa had a pupil, Rishi Jaimini. Now Jaimini said that it's not accessible to every person to silence their mind. So he said, I must give the people of India philosophy which is more accessible. So he created the philosophy of Purva Mimamsa. Now Vedanta is called Uttar Mimamsa, and Jaimini gave us Purva Mimamsa, which is the science of mantras. So he said that for everything you do, have a mantra for yourself. So there's a mantra before bathing, that just the way waters of consciousness purify my mind, let this water flowing through me bring me the wisdom of all the rivers. There's a mantra for eating, that I offer it to the Agni Dev, the gastric fire in my stomach. There's a mantra before you start your work, that I offer this work to the divine and may it reach everyone. Now, I know that all of us are very cut away from the mantras of the Vedas, and I don't expect you to do enough research to find a mantra for every action you do. But frame a mantra in your own language, in Hindi, English, Gujarati. Have a mantra which you make your own before everything you do, before you eat, before you sleep, just to remind you that there is a consciousness much wiser than my mind. And I want to find that truth. I want to be one with that truth. There's a will more powerful than my will. I want to quieten my thoughts so that I can be one with that will. So that's where mantras become useful. Of course, a generic mantra like Om Tat Sat Jyotir Arvinda or Om Shri Aurobindo Ma, beautiful to recite it all the time. And if it works for you, great. But otherwise, use your own creativity to make your own mantras, so that every day, before everything you do, there's a mantra reminding you of the goal of the doing, so that you don't get lost in the doing. Yeah? So that was the wisdom of mantras that the school of philosophy Purva Mimamsa spoke of. So now Mother says Sri Aurobindo dwells in the subtle physical. There in the immense cave of the inner being. So Mother often in her writing says that she always meets Sri Aurobindo because he's made himself a permanent home in the plane of consciousness called the subtle physical. And in one of her writings, she describes something very beautiful. She says, I think it was a playground meditation. It was after Sri Aurobindo had left his body. And she says she saw Sri Aurobindo huge, towering over everyone sitting there. And then she smiled and she saw him descending very slowly. Because if he descended quickly, it would have created a lot of friction in the physical body. So she said he came down very slowly as a descent of great peace and vastness. And she says she always meets him in the subtle physical. So, there in the immense cave of the inner being, one must plunge to find the inner support. One must descend and descend. She's talking about the psychic being further, more and more, plane after plane, consciousness after consciousness, leaving behind all imprints and enter into the very depths to find the serene peace. Within this immense quietude of the being, far from the exterior noise, far from the anguish and the pain, far from the thoughts and the imaginations, far, far away from the waves of sensations, one must enter very carefully, there where the ego does not exist, to feel the presence. So she's talking about the descent into the psychic being. So if you go deep, deep down, you find that part of you where the ego doesn't exist. There is yet further to go, still more to discover, to turn the consciousness inwards, where the power vibrates, all powerful, which accomplishes everything. So in the previous passage, Mother spoke about an all-powerful divine will, which is in the psychic being. Sri Aurobindo writes about it, no? Whether it seem good or evil to man's eyes, only for good the secret will works. So this secret will is the will of the deepest inside us, and it can be very different from what our outer being wills. In fact, often it's very different. So one must go still deeper, where there is no act, no impression, no ego, no separate self, nothing but waves of joy and a vibration which is at the origin of everything, like that, equal. She makes a gesture and of a perfect equanimity. So she's saying something very beautiful. She's saying each one of us are a universe into ourselves. And if the universe has a source, that same source is in me. On my surface, I'm appearing to be all this, happy sometimes, sad sometimes, egoistic sometimes, white sometimes. But if I go deeper and deeper and deeper into myself, at that depth, I am just this vibration of peace and wideness and equanimity. I'm just this source consciousness. To feel and to be united in this perfect and immutable peace, then to enter into that serene beatitude where the consciousness is completely identified with the central being. There is no duality anymore, no existence anymore, nothing at all. To be one with this spark of the immortal flame, the immanent divine, the unique and the one, the soul that resides in us. And still deeper down in this purifying flame resides Sri Aurobindo, immutable Ananda, all powerful, the invincible, the supreme Lord of our existence, the manifestation of the omnipresence in existence. The omnipresence is presence everywhere. He's present everywhere and He's present inside us. The omnipotence in His effectuations. Omnipotence is all power. The omniscience, the all wisdom of the supreme power manifested. One who is the goal, the master, the beloved, who is also the supreme Lord. What a beautiful passage. Mother is saying that if you go deep, deep inside you, you find these waves of bliss and wideness and equanimity. And if you go still deeper inside, you find the Lord because He's seated inside it. Yeah? So, the source consciousness is Sri Aurobindo Ma, and that's what Mother and Sri Aurobindo often used to marvel, that there is this absolute source of nectar waiting to be discovered inside mankind, and mankind thinks everything else is more important. So Sri Aurobindo once said, if man could once glimpse the absolute treasures of spiritual truth that await him if he takes a turn towards it, he would leave everything and want nothing else. But we are too busy pursuing other goals, but we don't realize that if we get this, we get everything. So there's a line in Savitri and in the Vedas that discover that knowing which you will know everything. As a corollary, discover that obtaining which you will obtain everything. But we are trying to obtain things piecemeal, whatever our goals are, etc. But if we discover this, everything else will come, because this is the source of everything. All power, all wisdom, all beatitude, all bliss. So then the power of Sri Aurobindo's name we've already read. Now we come to the passage which says, sound has a power in the material universe. Sound always has a power. It has much more power than men think. It may be a good power and it may be a bad power. It creates vibrations which have an undeniable effect. It is not so much the idea as the sound. The idea too has its own power, but in its own domain, whereas sound has a power in the material world. She's saying something very wonderful. So if I say, bless you or blessings on you, the blessings itself is a word which has a power. Suppose I don't know English. I don't know the meaning of blessings, and I say blessings without even knowing the meaning. Still the word has a power. But if I intend it, so Mother says later, if I just say good morning mechanically to people, it's okay. But suppose I really wish it from my heart, may you have a good morning, may you have a lovely day, and I say it with that intention, then the intention and the words, the very word good morning has a vibration of its own. But if it's twinned with intention, it becomes even more powerful. So, I think I have explained this to you once, Mother says. I told you, for example, that words spoken casually, usually without any reflection and without attaching any importance to them, can be used to do something very good. I think I spoke to you about bonjour, good day, didn't I? In French, bonjour is good day. When people meet and say bonjour, they do so mechanically and without thinking. But if you put a will into it, an inspiration to indeed wish someone a good day, well, there is a way of saying good day which is very effective, much more effective than if simply meeting someone you thought, I hope he has a good day without saying anything. So she's saying to say it mechanically is incomplete, and to say it in your head without articulating is incomplete. Say both, say it aloud and say it with intention. Then it actually helps the person. If with this hope in your thought, you say to him in a certain way, good day, you make it more concrete and more effective. So, it's a practice I follow. My workplace is the J.B. Petit school. So, every day when I get out of the car and it comes into my vision, I just fold my hand and say good morning to it. Because it's my workplace, it's my karma bhumi, and I bow in gratitude to it, because in a way your workplace is your temple, right? It's where so many beautiful things come to you. So instead of just wishing people, even that workplace, if you say good morning to it really in your mind, whatever your words, and you start your day with that, it's such a beautiful way to start. It's not just a concrete building, no? It's your karma kshetra. So, if with this hope in your thought, you say to him, I read this, no? More, if it's simply meeting someone with, I read this, okay. Now we go on to, this is power of words. Normal words with intention, they have a power. But each one must find one's own mantra. So Mother says, each one must find something that acts on himself individually. I am only speaking of the action on the physical plane, because mentally, vitally, in all the inner parts of the being, the aspiration is always spontaneous. I am referring only to the physical plane. So let me explain this before I read Mother's words. Mother is saying that the physical, the material body responds the most to a mantra, to a word which is repeated again and again and again. The physical, to open the physical to light, a mantra is of great importance. The physical seems to be more open to something that is repetitious. For example, the music we play on Sundays, which has 3 series of combined mantras. So for these mantras, everything depends upon what you want to do with them. I am in favor of a short mantra, especially if you want to make both numerous and spontaneous repetitions. 1 or 2 words, 3 at most. Om Shri Aurobindo Ma, Om Jyotir Arvinda, whatever. Because you must be able to use them in all cases. When an accident is about to happen, for example, it has to spring up without thinking. Just the word Ma is also a very powerful mantra. It has to spring up without thinking, without calling. It should issue forth from the being spontaneously like a reflex, exactly like a reflex. Then the mantra has its full force. So beautiful. There was a story of a lady who had cancer and she was very ill, and last stages of cancer, she was in a lot of pain. But she must have done so much sadhana with the mantra Om. Just Om is also a very powerful mantra, that when she'd have pain, instead of saying ouch, she would just say Om, Om. It just came out like a reflex. Whenever she was in pain, her mantra just came out. That's what Mother is saying. If you're articulating your mantra 24/7, whenever you're in difficulty, the mantra just comes out like a reflex. For me, on the days when I have no special preoccupation or difficulties, days I could call normal. When I'm normal, everything I do, all movements of the body, all the words I utter, all the gestures I make are accompanied and upheld by or lined as it were by this mantra. We know Mother's mantra, Om Namo Bhagavate. Can you imagine she's saying, everything I do, all the movements of the body, all the words I utter are accompanied by this. So even, she had such mastery that even when she was talking, somewhere in the background consciousness, this mantra Om Namo Bhagavate was just going on. That is the normal state. It creates an atmosphere of an intensity almost more material than a physical, than the subtle physical. It's like almost like the phosphorescent radiations from a medium, shining radiations from a medium, and it has a great action, a very great action. It can prevent an accident and it accompanies you all the time, all the time. So beautiful, no? If we had that kind of mastery of a mantra japa, suppose even when I'm talking to you, my mantra is going on in the background. If that happens, it really becomes like a shield for you, because I told you a mantra is really something that emits light. And light is not physical light. Light is a vibration of joy and vitality and peace and everything else. So if I'm constantly saying the mantra and it's constantly emitting the light of peace and joy and energy into my system, I'm that much less dependent on the world to make me happy, no? Because I'm already happy from a source inside me. Then I don't really care whether you like me or dislike me, how I appear in your head, because my happiness isn't dependent on that. When my happiness isn't sourced from something inside me, I'm hugely dependent on people to make me happy, on fulfillment of ambition in my work to make me happy. But if I'm already fulfilled inside, it's like a spiritual immunity. The world can't get to me. And that's what Mother says. The world can trouble you only in proportion to how much you belong to the world. If you belong exclusively to the divine, the world has no power to make you unhappy or happy for that matter. Your happiness is, so that's the kind of access a really intensely done mantra japa can give you. But okay, we'll come to the process in Mother's words. So if you feel the need, not there, not in your head, but here, Mother points to the center of her heart, it will come. One day either you will hear the words or they will spring forth from your heart. And when that happens, you must hold on to it. So till it doesn't happen, all of us, it may not spring forth directly, but see what mantra works for you. Om Ma, Om Shri Aurobindo Ma, Om Namo Bhagavate. Mother's mantra, very powerful. It's backed by all the tapas she has done on her body. So at every mantra, the more intense consciousness is repeated, See, every mantra is like actually a living entity. So, the science of sound says that every mantra is a living entity somewhere in space, and you have to woo it to come alive in your consciousness with the intensity of your tapas. But it's there. But for it to live in you, you have to woo it and make it alive in your being. So, if mantra is an entity by itself, imagine a mantra which a being like mother has done intense tapasya on constantly. So it's a very powerful mantra, Om Namo Bhagavate, but you shouldn't use it just because you've heard this. It should be something that resonates with you. Suppose a mantra like Om resonates with you more, or Ma, or Om Shri Aurobindo Ma, whatever. It should be a mantra which creates a feeling inside you. Then it's really a mantra that has power. So now Mother says, develop the habit of repeating your mantra in difficulty. When you're playing and suddenly become aware that something is going wrong, you are making mistakes, are inattentive, sometimes opposing currents come across what you're doing. Suppose you're in the grips of a negative mind state of fear or whatever. If you develop the habit automatically at this moment of calling as by a mantra, of repeating a word that has an extraordinary effect. You choose your mantra, or rather one day it comes to you spontaneously in a moment of difficulty. Often happens in nightmares. Something very dark is chasing you and suddenly you say Ma or Shri Aurobindo Ma, and the nightmare ends, or it can come to you like that also. At a time when things are very difficult, when you have a sort of anguish, anxiety, when you don't know what is going to happen, suddenly this springs up inside you. The word springs up inside you. For each one it may be different, but if you mark this and each time you face a difficulty, you repeat it, it becomes irresistible. For instance, if you feel you're about to, I think I told you this story, we know Narad from Auroville. So Narad said that one day there were some riots happening, and there was a child trapped somewhere who needed to be rescued, otherwise the child would get hurt. So there were stones being thrown and a lot of violence, and Narad just started shouting Ma's name aloud, so saying Ma, Ma, Ma loudly. He rushed through the crowds, nothing hit him. He picked up the child, he brought him back, and just before putting him down, he stopped saying Mama. And just when he stopped saying Ma, a stone hit him. So that's the power of the name. If you say the name, literally, and Mother says it, no, we know this story that there was a soldier who came to visit Ma. She was in her body and told her that, Ma, I don't know if I'll come back, I'm going to war. And Ma said, what nonsense, with my name in your heart, you can go into the mouth of death and nothing can touch one hair on your head. And sure enough, he went into war, came back totally unscathed. So that's the power her name has. So, Mother says, for instance, if you feel you're about to fall ill, if you feel you're doing badly what you're doing, if you feel something evil is going to attack you then, but it must be a spontaneity in the being. It must spring up from you without your needing to think about it. You choose your mantra because it's a spontaneous expression of your aspiration. It must be one word, 2 or 3 words, a sentence. That depends on each one, but it must be a sound which awakens in you a certain conditions. So I want to share with you something I'm very, very, very grateful for. This happened just last week. We know everyone's coming down with coughs and colds, and very severe ones which are taking sometimes a month to heal. So when I came home from school last Tuesday, I was feeling fluey in my body. I knew I was going to come down with something. So, and I had a very hectic 3-4 days ahead, a lot of work. I couldn't afford to be ill. So I just sat, concentrated on Mother in my heart, and then just said Om Shri Aurobindo Ma in my throat, where I was feeling something awkward, and in my whole body. And by the time I finished, I felt the malaise had left. Otherwise, next day I would have surely come down with a bad flu, which I can't afford to just now. But I'm sharing this because it's available to all of you. Don't think only I can do it. What Mother has brought down is available to each and every one of us. We have them, we have their name, but we don't believe we can do it. The problem is you feel, oh, I'm coming down with a flu, now it will be, we'll blame the pollution, we'll blame everything else. All that is what it is, but why are we not tapping into the power that Mother has given in each of our hands? Because she really has. For instance, if you feel you're about to fall ill, if you feel you're doing badly what you're doing, if you feel something evil is going to attack you then, but it must be a spontaneity in the being. It must spring up from you without your needing to think about it. You choose your mantra because it is a spontaneous expression of your aspiration. It must be one word, 2 or 3 words, a sentence, that depends on each one. But it must be a sound which awakens in you a certain condition. Then when you have that, I assure you that you can pass through everything without difficulty. Even in the face of a real veritable danger, an attack for instance, by someone who wants to kill you, if without getting excited, without getting perturbed, you quietly repeat your mantra, one can do nothing to you. You can go into the mouth of death with my name on your lips and nothing can touch one hair on your head. Naturally, you must truly be a master of yourself. One part of the being must not be trembling there like a leaf. No, you must do it entirely, sincerely. Then it is all powerful. That's what. If you're coming down with a cold or some illness and you concentrate on healing it, but one part of you feels, nahin, I'm too ordinary, I can't heal myself, I can't do it, then it won't happen. You have to fully believe you can do it, or rather the Mother inside you can do it and will do it, and you'll see it will be miraculous. The best is when the word comes to you spontaneously. You call in a moment of great difficulty, mental, vital, physical, emotional, whatever it may be. And suddenly that springs up in you, 2 or 3 words, whatever they may be, Om Shri Aurobindo Ma, whatever, like magical words. You must remember these and form the habit of repeating them in moments when difficulties come. If you form the habit, one day it will come to you spontaneously. When the difficulty comes, at the same time the mantra will come. Then you will see that the results are wonderful. But it must not be an artificial thing or something you arbitrarily decide, I shall use those words. Nor should somebody else tell you, oh, you know, this is very good. It's perhaps very good for him, but not for everyone. So I re-emphasize, your mantra is something that you respond to. What do I mean? It's something your body should respond to. If you say it with enough devotion and your body responds with goose flesh or tingles or something, then it is your mantra. Now mother says, repeat your mantra before sleeping. You must lie flat on your back and relax all the muscles and all the nerves. It is an easy thing to learn, to be like what I call a rag on a bed. Nothing else remains. And if you can do that with the mind also, you get rid of all those stupid dreams that make you more tired when you get up than when you went to bed. It is the cellular activity of the brain that continues without control and that tires one so much. Very often you wake up feeling tired, right? Because if you go to sleep overthinking, that overthinking repeats. Like we often say that your consciousness at the moment of dying determines your next birth. Now sleep is, I don't mean dying in the body, but a form of death to your consciousness. So the state of mind you fall asleep in will determine the quality of your whole sleep. So it's very important to fall asleep in a illumined, lit up state of mind. So it is the cellular activity of the brain that continues without control and that tires one much. So a total relaxation, a sort of complete calm without tension, in which everything is stopped, this is only the beginning. So she says you make yourself like a rag, relax all your muscles. Afterwards, after doing this, you make a self-giving as total as possible of everything from top to bottom, from outside to inside, and an eradication as total as possible of all the resistance of the ego. And you begin repeating your mantra, your mantra. If you have one or any word which has the power for you, a word leaping forth from the heart spontaneously like a prayer, a word which sums up your aspiration. After repeating a certain number of times, if you are accustomed to do so, you enter in a trance, and from that trance you pass into sleep. This is of course mother's talking about herself, but she is very kind. Next paragraph she said, even for those of you who've never been in a trance. So, but let me complete with this. The trance lasts as long as it should, and quite naturally, spontaneously you pass into sleep. But when you come back from this sleep, you remember everything. That's a conscious sleep. The sleep was like a continuation of the trance. Even for those of you who have never been in trance, it is good to repeat a mantra, a word, a prayer before going into sleep. But there must be a life in the words. I do not mean an intellectual significance, nothing of that kind, but a vibration. And its effect on the body is extraordinary. It begins to vibrate, vibrate, vibrate. And quietly you let yourself go as though you wanted to go to sleep. The body vibrates more and more, more and more, more and more, and away you go. This is the cure for tamas. So she said a beautiful thing. Before sleeping, what do? You first lie down in Shavasana. Relax every muscle in your body as much as you can from head to toe, and then you offer yourself self-giving, and then you start repeating your mantra. Yeah? Now words from Savitri. Here must the traveler of the upward way. So all of us are travelers of the upward way, the way of evolution, right? For daring hell's kingdoms winds the heavenly route. There's another line in Savitri, none can reach heaven who hasn't passed through hell. So every time you're going through hell, remember it's your way to go to heaven eventually. So here he's saying a similar thing. For daring hell's kingdoms winds the heavenly route. Pause or pass slowly through that perilous space. A prayer upon his lips and the great name. So this is Ashwapati's path where he is going through hell's kingdoms on the way upwards. But what is his equipment? A prayer upon his lips and the great name. And if he has that, None of the furies of hell can ever scathe him. Beautiful line, a prayer upon his lips and the great name. So now there's a poem called The Great Name. It says, "'Tis is a way of writing it is. 'Tis not to you alone that I call by your name." So when I'm calling God by his name, Om Shri Aurobindo Ma, whatever, it's not just to the form of God that you're calling. The poet goes on to say what all you're really calling to by the great name. "'Tis not to you alone that I call by your name, when all of me becomes a blessed tongue intoning the great name." So the siddhi of mantra jap is when your whole being becomes a blessed tongue, which is just repeating the name. When all of me becomes a blessed tongue intoning the great name, overwhelmed by its puissance. Puissance is power. The great name is so powerful. And when all of me becomes a tongue saying the name, I'm overwhelmed by its power and melted down by its beauty. I call to the truth that hides behind appearances. So when I'm saying Om Shri Aurobindo Ma, I'm not just calling to their form. I'm calling to the truth, the universal truth of everything being God, the ultimate truth. I'm calling to that. I call to the truth that hides behind appearances. I call to the light that rescues the darkness. I call to the eternal fullness that redeems the perceived lack. So in the moment if I'm feeling a lack and I'm saying Om Shri Aurobindo Ma, I'm calling to the eternal fullness that you really are behind the perceived lack. 'Tis not to you alone that I call by your name. I call to that once glimpse deep of unfathomable sweetness. So when I'm meditating and I've experienced that unfathomable deep of sweetness, but in the moment I'm not feeling it. But when I'm saying Om Shri Aurobindo Ma, I'm calling to that one moment I have experienced perhaps sometimes. I call to the voiceless whispers forever beckoning beyond. Mother's whispers are always beckoning us beyond. I call to the sound of the mysterious flute. The flute represents the power of attraction the divine has on the human soul. So when I'm saying Shri Aurobindo Ma, I'm calling to the sound of the mysterious flute, wafting through the babble of material noises. Material noises are the noises of my thoughts. But through my thoughts, there's a flute which is always calling me. And when I say Om Shri Aurobindo Ma, I'm responding to the call of the flute. 'Tis not to you alone that I reach out by your name. I reach out to the lost kingdoms of the spirit. When I say Om Shri Aurobindo Ma, I'm calling out to the lost kingdoms of the spirit. I reach out to the loved one, now lost in the mist of compulsive thoughts. Mother is the loved one, but I've lost her in the mist of compulsive thoughts. So I'm reaching out to that. I reach out for the buoyant, light wings, now shackled by the great illusion. So I have spiritual wings, but they are shackled, they are tied down by the great illusion. I reach out to the vast oceans of the real that are renounced for the shimmering mirages of name and form. So beautiful. I'm reaching out when I say Om Shri Aurobindo Ma to the vast oceans of the real that are renounced for the shimmering mirages of name and form. So Rumi says it beautifully, no? People fancy that they are enjoying themselves. You know, when I'm partying, when I'm doing everything, I feel good, I'm enjoying myself. But Rumi says they are really plucking out their wings for the sake of an illusion. Yeah? We are giving up the real spring of joy and peace for the sake of an illusion. Because whatever we are enjoying in the moment, it's going to pass, it's going to change. But the real that will always stay with us as our sustenance, we are turning our back on it. So I'm just reading this out without explanation. So just understand, this is what repetition of the great name can give you. The poem is titled The Great Name. "'Tis not to you alone that I call by your name. When all of me becomes a blessed tongue, intoning the great name, overwhelmed by its puissance, melted down by its beauty, I call to the truth that hides behind its appearance. I call to the light that rescues the darkness. I call to the eternal fullness that redeems the perceived lack. 'Tis not to you alone that I call by your name. I call to the once glimpse deep of unfathomable sweetness. I call to the voiceless whispers forever beckoning beyond. I call to the sound of the mysterious flute wafting through the babble of material voices. 'Tis not to you alone that I reach out by your name. I reach out to the lost kingdoms of the spirit. I reach out to the loved one lost in the mist of compulsive thoughts. I reach out for the buoyant wings now shackled by the great illusion. I reach out to the vast oceans of the real that are renounced for the shimmering mirages of name and form. Now, Mother's words, the way to do japa. Japa is mantra japa, very important. The japa is usually successful only on one of two conditions. If it is repeated with a sense of its significance, a dwelling of something in the mind on the nature, power, beauty, attraction of the Godhead it signifies, and is to bring into the consciousness, that is the mental way. Or if it comes up from the heart or rings in it with a certain sense of feeling of bhakti, making it alive, that is the emotional way. So Mother is saying a very important thing. If you do a japa mechanically, may not be very useful. Maybe some useful because the name itself has a power, but it won't give you the full power that it could if you did it involving your mind in it. So I'm saying Om Shri Aurobindo Ma, supposing that's the mantra. But what am I really thinking of? That's what this poem, The Great Name, is saying. I'm really thinking of the truth that lies behind appearances, because Shri Aurobindo Ma are that truth. I'm thinking of whatever they are to you. Now, I can't tell you what they are to you because to each of us they are something unique. They have a unique relationship with each of us. But think of what they are to you. And that's in the mind, in the heart, the emotion of love and gratitude. So incubate the mantra in the thought and the emotion. Then the phenomena of sonoluminescence we spoke about, sound becoming light. It will actually become light inside you. And very beautiful to even make an attempt that throughout the day, whatever I'm doing, the background consciousness, I'm saying my mantra. Okay, so we end with this. So do practice it. How many of you anyway practice a lot of mantra japa? Very good. I hope this week your practice of it will be even more intense. And for those of us who don't, try it. Just make an experiment with it. But sit with yourself and ask yourself which mantra resonates the most with you. Don't choose a mantra arbitrarily. And then at least 5 minutes every day, sit quietly and charge the mantra with the thought and emotion that we spoke about just now. Because if you don't do that, then throughout the day to repeat it, it will become mechanical. At least that 5-10 minutes, sit and charge it. And then it will be with you throughout the day. Chalo, let's end with 3 Oms.